All right, we're back in another Sound the Battle Cry, and the name of the message today is Demoralization, Encouraging Surrender and Defeat in the World and in the Bible. Now, what in the world is this teaching about? Well, let me just tell you right off the bat that this is about psychological warfare. And the reason we're talking about this teaching today, the subject, is that I can see these techniques being used clear as day. These tactics being used in politics, on social media, and to me it's just plain as day. But we know we need to break it down. We need to bring some education to the table for people to learn as to what's really going on, because you can't fight a war, you can't fight in a war if you don't know that you're in one, if you have no idea. And another point I want to make is that there are different types of war. Usually when people think about war, they think about what is known as kinetic warfare, right? Shooting with guns and bombs and missiles and all those other types of things. But there are other levels to warfare. In fact, there are many other levels that are above that. The highest level of warfare I would consider to be spiritual. That is the number one power source in the world, is spiritual. And then right under that, which has some overlap, would be psychological warfare, the war of the mind. Because ultimately, even in kinetic warfare, at the end of the day, it still is a psychological warfare, because the goal is to make the enemy to submit, to surrender, to give up. And that has to happen in their hearts and in their minds before they do that. So at the end of the day, it's a psychological warfare. It's a spiritual war. But we're talking about this tactic today called demoralization. And that is a tactic used in psychological warfare. We might talk about some other tactics another day, but we're going to focus on this one today. And what we're going to start with is we are going to do a study about how this is used in psychological warfare in the world, in war, with other, against other countries, against foreign enemies, and all those other types of things. And then we're going to talk about how the same things are actually found in the Bible, that, psychological warfare and specifically tactics of demoralization have been used in the Bible, and I'll show you. But one last thing before we get into this is what I want you to do is think about this. Think about how demoralization is used as a psychological warfare tactic, supposedly only against foreign enemies. What I want you to do is just pretend, right? This is just pretend that the citizens of this country were being treated as a foreign enemy, and the same exact tactics were being used against them. What would that look like? I want you to imagine, hypothetically, if that were ever to, I'm not saying that it's actually happening, but just pretend that it was. And I want you to imagine people that talk about politics nonstop on social media, on Twitter, on YouTube. I want you to imagine, what if they were being used or were intentionally using tactics of demoralization against the citizens of this country? Maybe you could start to pick up on seeing some of those tactics used. And so as we study this, it may open your eyes more and more to exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so let's get into the study. First of all, what is morale? Right? Because it's demoralization, that's taking away the morale. Well, what is morale? Morale is defined as, also known as esprit de corps, is the capacity of a group's members to maintain belief in an institution or a goal, particularly in the face of opposition or hardship. Okay? Now, in the world, right? In the secular world, this would be, morale. A lot of times it's used in the military, right? So morale is they have a belief in their cause for the military, for their country, for the Constitution. They believe in that. They believe in that cause. And the group all believes that cause together, and they're willing to fight and even die for that cause. And when they are fully committed to that, their morale is high. And even in the face of opposition, with fighting against an enemy, people dying, psychological warfare tactics being used against them, they will continue to fight if the morale is high. Now, if the morale goes down, they start to lose the will to fight. Morale is often referenced by authority figures as a generic value judgment of the willpower, obedience, and self-discipline of a group tasked with performing duties assigned by a superior. According to Alexander H. Layton, morale is the capacity of a group of people to pull together persistently and consistently in pursuit of a common purpose. Morale is important in the military because it improves unit cohesion. With good morale, a force will be less likely to give up or surrender. Morale is usually assessed at a collective rather than an individual level. In wartime, civilian morale is also important. Esprit de corps is considered to be an important part of the fighting unit. Okay, so that's the basic definition of morale, how it's used in the military and other types of groups, right? Even sometimes at jobs, right? People say, oh, low morale today. Nobody wants to do anything. Nobody wants to work. Some people start to lose the will to do what they're supposed to do, whether it's work or fighting war. And even you could apply this to churches, right? Groups of people together, Christians, they're supposed to believe in the same cause, in God, in Jesus Christ, in the Word of God, and they're supposed to be working together with charity, functioning as a mature body to spread the gospel and expand the kingdom of God. But they too can be victims of demoralization campaigns by the devil's kingdom to discourage them, so they lose the will to fight. And so that absolutely applies in the spiritual realm as well. Okay? So that's morale. So now let's get into demoralization. We're going to switch over to an article, and this is on Wikipedia. Now, sometimes I like to always give this disclaimer. Wikipedia is absolutely filled with nonsense. A lot of times there's coincidentally, propaganda. There are, some silly things written, some articles that are edited, but sometimes they just put things out there, right out in the open. And that's why I like to use it sometimes, because you don't even have to buy all kinds of obscure books from, used bookstores or on corners of the internet and spend $300 to find some book and check the sources to find these hidden things, these concepts. It's just right out in the open. And I think people have trouble sometimes just connecting the dots, because people are just too used to listening to all the talking heads that are put in front of them, the political pundits, the alternative media pundits, and they just watch that and regurgitate. Watch it and regurgitate, no matter what realm you're in. And believe me, I know about many different factions, the neo-reactionaries, the agorists, the post-libertarians. I see it all over the place. I see quite a bit. And what you're going to see is, you may see these tactics used in many, many corners of the internet. So let's get into this article. Demoralization in the context of warfare. Demoralization is, in the context of warfare, national security, and law enforcement, a process in psychological warfare with the objective to erode morale among enemy combatants and or non-combatants. Okay, so not only combatants, but also non-combatants, civilians. That can encourage them to retreat, surrender, or defect rather than defeating them in combat. Okay? So again, in kinetic warfare, the goal is to kill people, right? But that's not the main goal. The main goal is to get the enemy to surrender, to bend to your will. In PsyOps, they say we win hearts and minds. Well, you can also change hearts and minds through killing people, because they will be demoralized. So again, demoralization encouraging people to retreat, surrender, or defect to the other side. Demoralization methods are military tactics such as, here's a few, hit-and-run attacks, such as snipers disturbing the enemy with less lethal weapons and incapacitating agents, and intimidation such as display of force concentration. Some methods on the strategic scale are commerce raiding, strategic bombing, static operations such as sieges and naval blockades, and propaganda. Okay? Now, one quick point about that last term there, propaganda. Officially, throughout history in this country, propaganda was not allowed to be used against domestically in our country towards our own citizens. But with the repeal of the Smith-Mundt Act, it was then allowed. So that might be something you want to look into. But propaganda is one tactic used in the broader campaigns of psychological warfare. So these are some of the tactics that are used, but they all work together to demoralize an enemy, right? So use as many different tools in the toolbox as you can to try to get them to retreat, surrender, defect, lose morale, just not feel like fighting anymore. They lose hope. They lose, and think about that too in the context of biblical concepts about hope, faith. It talks about courage, encouraging. David encouraged himself in the Lord. People were discouraged or dismayed. That's the same thing, right? So these are biblical concepts as well. You're supposed to, if you are a Christian, you're supposed to have hope. You're supposed to be encouraged. You're supposed to encourage others. You're supposed to have faith, right? But those things can be attacked to demoralize you. But let's continue, right, on this in the realm of the world and politics. So let's look at a few things from this article. Very interesting things that are talked about in this article. Importance of morale. Morale is often perceived, and by the way, this isn't very long. Morale is often perceived as a necessary precursor to success in international relations. Success most often goes to those who believe in their cause. Okay? True believers, people that really believe in their cause, the ones that believe the most in their cause usually have success, as they more easily maintain a positive outlook that helps them work harder for it. That's why morale is so important. High morale can directly contribute to an economy of food, textiles, fuel, and other commodities, and to stimulate recruiting, employment in war industries, service and relief work, and the purchase of bonds. Writing in 1965, French philosopher and sociologist Jacques Ellul described the importance of morale in modern society by saying this. So this is just in the context of modern society, right? Listen to this quote. The modern citizen is asked to participate in wars, such as have never been seen before. All men must prepare for war, and for a dreadful type of war at that. Dreadful because of its duration, the immensity of its operations, its tremendous losses, and the atrocity of the means employed. Moreover, participation in war is no longer limited to the duration of the war itself. There is the period of preparation for war, which becomes more and more intense and costly. Then there is the period in which to repair the ravages of war. People really live in a permanent atmosphere of war, and a superhuman war in every respect. Nowadays, everybody is affected by war. Everybody lives under its threat. The more demanded of man, the more powerful must be those motivations. Right, exactly. And, that was talked about in the book 1984 by George Orwell. They're always in a permanent state of war. They would constantly edit the history books to say we have always been at war with Oceania and all these other types of things. Always in a perpetual state of war. Now, in this country, we have been at war for a long time, somewhere in the world, and many times multiple different countries. And it's true, though, with the preparation, the war, and the aftermath, it takes a lot of morale to make anyone even want to participate in any of it. So a lot of energy and resources must be expended to keep morale as high as possible, or else people will just not participate. Though variations are possible, the most common indicators of high morale are determination, enthusiasm, self-confidence, and a relative absence of criticism or complaint. While contributors to the level of morale are essentially endless, common examples consist of the level to which individuals identify with the nation or cause, have their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter met, have confidence in the justness of their cause, have confidence in the ability of their cause to overcome obstacles, the means through which authorities instill discipline, and a sense of unity with other supporters of the cause. Now, if you, there's a lot in there, right? Now, if you think about what's going on today in the country of the United States, we could see that morale is pretty low. Morale is pretty low, and morale is pretty low for a lot of reasons. Let's go back through some of these. Contributors to morale are, the level to which individuals identify with the nation or cause. Well, half the country absolutely despises the nation, even despises the Constitution, has openly talked about getting rid of it, doesn't care about it one little bit. And then the other side is demoralized by that other side because it seems that they've captured most of the major institutions of education, media, other corporations. Have their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter met. A lot of that is not being met. Gas prices very high, and therefore morale goes down. Have confidence in the justice of their cause. A lot of people lost faith in that. Have confidence in the ability of their cause to overcome obstacles. A lot of faith being lost in that. Now, that is one thing to pay attention to, okay? Having confidence in the ability of their cause to overcome obstacles. That is where you start to see some people are clearly using demoralization tactics towards people, the citizens of this country. Well, hypothetically, you may be able to see that. And then, so let's move on to the next part. But those are some of the things that contribute to the morale. Move on to psychological warfare. In an environment in which two belligerents compete, the chances of success greatly diminish if those whose actions are necessary lack faith in the justness of the cause or its chance for success, or are discouraged, morally defeated, disconsolate, antagonistic, sullen, inattentive, or lazy. Again, hypothetically, you could see a lot of this stuff going on today. Okay, now look at two belligerents compete. We have that in our own country. Basically, there's two countries right now competing for control of this landmass and the institutions, right? But it says the chances of success greatly diminish if those whose actions are necessary lack faith in the justice of their cause or discouraged. Okay, so look at this. Discouraged, morally defeated, sullen. Now, what could discourage people? What could discourage people? Now, think about, I don't know, constant political posts on Twitter or YouTube videos where all they talk about is, look at how bad things are, look at how bad things are, look at how bad things are. Look at what they're doing to you. Look at what they're doing to you. Oh, I can't believe how bad it is. I can't believe what they're doing here. I can't believe what they're doing here. You starting to see what I'm talking about? And I'm not just talking about one group, one particular account, a person or group or organization. It's in many different places. But you see this again and again where they don't really offer a solution to you. And all they do is say, look at how bad this is. I can't believe how evil this is. Oh, I can't believe, look at the corruption here. Look at how corrupt this is. Look how unjust this is. Oh, I can't believe this person's going to get away with this again. Nothing's going to happen. No justice. And they send these messages out to their audiences day in and day out, every week, every month, and people just consume that. Now, what do you think it's doing to people? Do you think it's increasing morale or lowering morale? Do you think it's demoralizing? What do you think about that? What do you think those types of messages being pumped into people's heads constantly every single week is doing to them? But somehow people think that if we just listen to this stuff day in and day out, magically a solution will pop out of nowhere. A savior will come, fix everything and change everything. Or the people will just rise up and change it all. Well, does that really make sense in the context of people just being demoralized every single day? And demoralized, by the way, by people who claim to be on their side. Oh yeah. They claim to be conservative, libertarian, alternative media, whatever it may be. And it's constantly messages of, look how bad this is. Look how corrupt this is. Oh, I can't believe they did this. They got away with this again. Demoralization through objective conditions most commonly takes the form of a military defeat on the battlefield that has tangible consequences directly resulting in the indicators of a demoralized party. But it can also result from an adverse physical environment where basic needs go unmet. Again, we talked about that, basic needs unmet. But what about this? A military defeat. Now, we haven't really seen in modern day times, a military battle on United States soil, but we have seen it in other countries. And when did we see a defeat? Well, it kind of looked like a defeat in Afghanistan when after 20 years we just left and then the Taliban took right back over the country. Now, what do you think? Now, do you think that was all an accident? Do you think that was an accident because it had a pretty strong demoralizing effect towards people who actually do believe in the country, in the Constitution, the concept of the United States of America? It would demoralize young men from joining because they would say, well, what's the point? And maybe demoralize people who did serve, who did go do multiple tours in Afghanistan, and then they saw that happen. How demoralizing would it be to them? And they basically to push the message to them, yeah, all that stuff that you did, that was all for no reason. That's a very demoralizing message. Now, if you want to speculate whether that was on purpose or not, that's up to you. But I'm just laying out some of these facts. Demoralization through perception, however, is the most commonly referred to means of demoralization, even though its operation and results, like political warfare and psychological warfare in general, are the most difficult to gauge. That is in the form of demoralization that is referred to as a tool of psychological warfare, and it is most commonly implemented through various forms of propaganda. Propaganda as a tool of demoralization refers to influencing opinion through significant symbols, through means such as rumors, stories, pictures, reports, and other means of social communication, such as video, social media, other means of political, and isn't it interesting that they don't say social media? Other means of political and psychological warfare, such as deception, disinformation, agents of influence, or forgeries, may also be used to destroy morale through psychological means so that belligerents start questioning the validity of their beliefs and actions. Now, we may talk about some of those other tactics another day, but many different tactics are used. But look at this. It says propaganda is a tool of demoralization using symbols, rumors, stories, pictures, reports, social media, videos, putting out propaganda. Now, I just want you to think about this, okay? I'm keeping it very simple. I want you to not even consider the source, okay? It doesn't matter if it's in a mainstream source, an alternative source. I don't care if it's a media outlet, a company, an individual. I want you to ask yourself one question whenever you watch a video or read an article or read a social media post. After you are done looking at that, I want you to ask yourself the question, do I feel demoralized after reading that or watching that or listening to this person? Okay? Just get in the habit of asking yourself that question. Do I feel demoralized after consuming that piece of content? And that's a good habit to get into. Here's a few means used. And by the way, this isn't exhaustive. Man, you could read you could read books about this. Many books have been written. But this is a basic overview. Means used. While demoralization may use propaganda, deception, disinformation, agents of influence, forgeries, and any other political warfare tool in isolation to accomplish its ends, a strategic demoralization effort will use more than one of these means as determined by its target and will not limit itself to the strict limits of attacking another belligerent's morale. Okay? Usually, they're not just going to use one method. They're going to use a combination. Okay? Now, what's interesting is we recently had this, ministry of truth that was created. And then it didn't last long. And the woman that was supposed to run that quit. That's all done. But it was supposed to be about, patrolling disinformation, right? And a lot of liberal media outlets talk about disinformation, and they have reporters on the disinformation beat. But what's interesting about that is they are actually putting out disinformation by calling the truth disinformation. So you see how twisted this can get. Let's continue. A strategic demoralization campaign should tailor its strategy to the specific target and situation. That's another good point. That's why it's important to have all these different... It's the same thing in marketing, right? They say in marketing that a message that appeals to everyone appeals to no one. And what that means is you have to be specific in your message or you're not going to get response. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to make anyone... it's not going to persuade anyone or cause anyone to take any action. And usually in marketing, it's buying your product. But in the demoralization, the subject of demoralization and propaganda today, what they want people to do is to be demoralized and to change their mentality. And so it has to be tailored to specific groups. And so you can't just have one outlet or one person just giving the message to everyone. It has to be many different outlets, many different groups, individual people. I'm sure it'd be a good investment to pay for YouTube channels, blogs, Twitter accounts, many different things. Denial of an enemy image. An important precursor to successful demoralization is an effort to deny the target the ability to project frustrations and hatred upon a common enemy. Okay, that's important. Because to have high morale, they got to have a common enemy. They're focused on that and say, that's the enemy, we're fighting against them. But then when you start to muddy the waters with that subject, morale starts to go down. Such efforts will affect the tendency of the target citizenry to project their discontent towards a common enemy identified by their government. As a result, frustrations will build until it is necessary to divert them elsewhere, and seeds of doubt are then sown in the minds of the citizenry, who now question the capability of their leadership in identifying the most ominous threat. Okay? And they go, okay, well, what is the real threat? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this country? Is it this country, that country? Is it that government over there in that country? Is it within our own country? We don't know. Can't agree on what the enemy is. Can you see that today? Hypothetically. We're going to kind of breeze through this a little bit. let's continue on here. Sowing seeds of doubt and anxiety. Yeah, I want to cover this part. Very important section. And we're going to wrap up this article real quick and then move on to the next part of the study. Sowing seeds of doubt and anxiety. Causing self-doubt or doubt in a cause is the simple definition most commonly ascribed to demoralization, okay? So that's one of the biggest ways they define demoralization, is causing self-doubt or doubt in a cause. Okay, so if they can get you to doubt the cause that you believe in, you've been demoralized. It is one aspect of a successful strategic demoralization campaign, but is the most pronounced and essential part. Laswell stated, quote, "The keynote in the preliminary spade work is the unceasing refrain, 'Your cause is hopeless. Your blood is spilt in vain.'" Okay? That's the message. That's the general sentiment. Your cause is hopeless. Your blood is spilt in. It's all in vain. There's no point in doing what you're doing. Right? Kind of reminds me of the game Mortal Kombat. They had the final boss in some of the games was this guy named Shao Kahn. And the whole time you're fighting him, he's saying, "That was pathetic. You will never win." He's just laughing at you, saying the stuff over and over again. He's trying to demoralize you, get you to give up. You're hopeless. A lot of times they have that the villains in cartoons. "You will never win. You're hopeless. You'll never defeat us," and all this stuff. It's always used to try to get people to doubt their cause. Propaganda can be an indispensable tool in fostering an environment of doubt and anxiety. An environment of doubt and anxiety. Would you say, hypothetically, we have that today? Okay? An environment of doubt and anxiety. Propaganda may be used to ensure the antagonist is the most feared party, giving a feeling of non-worth to the target. Exploit internal fissures inherent within the target group, divide and conquer, or use the element of surprise to show a target population that their leadership and cause are unable to protect them from the impending enemy threat. Surprise attacks. You go, "Oh man, our leadership didn't even see that coming." And then they start to lose faith in the leadership. Many studies have been conducted that indicate fear is one of the most widespread psychological traits. And that trait can be manipulated for the purposes of demoralization if it can be expanded into anxiety. Okay, this is very important. I did a teaching a while ago, a few years back. It's called Dangers of the Truth Movement. Fear-mongering creates slavery, not freedom. And it's all about, mostly in alternative media, the fear-mongering that goes on constantly. Fear, fear, fear. And and I said at the beginning that it is okay and it is a good thing to be informed. It's a good thing. You should not just listen to the mainstream media. You need to question things. You need to see through the lies, absolutely. But there's also lies in alternative media as well. And you have to also see other things that are going on, such as constantly, subjecting yourself to information that causes fear day in and day out. It's fear, fear, fear. And again, that's demoralizing. That ties together with this. But they say that the goal is that trait can be manipulated for the purpose of demoralization if it can be expanded to anxiety. So think about this. Do you think it's a good thing if you are constantly watching alternative media and it's a lot of fear-mongering stuff, and then you have anxiety? If you feel anxiety, or maybe you don't even know why you have anxiety. Maybe you don't know. But maybe it could be because you are saturating your mind with this stuff day in and day out. Every day, it's all you're watching, listening to, reading. And this fear is turning into anxiety, and it's demoralizing. For anxiety to demoralize, it must result in a distancing of individuals or groups from their cause or leadership because they no longer believe them capable of offering a solution to the source of their anxiety. Real and conscious threats that normally inspire disquiet and fear can be made to cause anxiety and borderline neurosis through the use of such propaganda tools as fables and rumors. And isn't it interesting, in the Bible, Matthew 24, Jesus said there would be wars and rumors of wars. There would be rumors. And so, real and conscious threats also combined with fables and rumors. So, you don't even know sometimes whether something's true or not. But as long, the only thing that matters is the perception. So as long as it causes fear, if you turn that fear into anxiety, now the demoralization campaign is having a good effect in the eyes of them. Demoralization is working. Using multiple tools of political warfare such as deception, disinformation, agents of influence, and forgeries can expedite the onset of anxiety by overwhelming the target with a constant onslaught of information. That is exactly where we're at today. Constant onslaught of information. Overwhelmed with so much information, you can't even handle it. So, expedite the onset of anxiety by overwhelming the target with the constant onslaught of information that the current cause of leader or leadership is incapable of relieving the anxiety now felt. Absolutely. Isn't that how many people feel? That they see all the problems are pointed out to them, and then they have anxiety about it, and then they feel, well, the current leadership is so either incompetent or corrupt that they can't solve the problems, and so the anxiety is not going to go away, it's just going to get worse. That anxiety cannot be calmed through a rational explanation of facts, and is exacerbated by such an approach. Hear that? The anxiety cannot be calmed through a rational explanation of facts. Does that explain to you why many people will not listen no matter how much evidence and facts you give them? It doesn't matter, because they are demoralized. They are demoralized, and you can't just break through that instantly by just saying, hey, we'll just learn these facts and now you can just feel different. It doesn't just go away that easy. It's going to take more than that. And that's why we're talking about the spiritual aspect later in this teaching. The newly onset anxiety places mass groups of individuals on the border of neurosis and can make them feel conflicts inherent within society or their past. Okay? And, it seems like a lot of people are very unhinged. They're coming apart at the seams, mentally ill. It's because of the media environment that we're in today, the information war. It's because a huge part of that is demoralization campaigns, allegedly and hypothetically, if you were to imagine such a scenario. As a result of contradictions and threats, man feels accused, guilty. The target will then begin their search for a cause that will provide a sense of righteousness. They will try to find one. Oh, I have the woke cause. Oh, I have the Founding Fathers 1776 cause. Oh, I have the ethno-nationalist cause. Whatever it may be, some people try to find something. The pivotal moment of a successful demoralization campaign is when the target is doubt-ridden and anxious. The point at which individual members of a citizenry or group are detached from their current loyalty to their state or cause, and they are then able to be focused in another direction more suitable to the antagonist's needs. Okay? So they demoralize you and then redirect you where they want you to go. If not executed properly, the manufactured sense of anxiety can both backfire on antagonists and cause the subject to cling more closely to their original cause or government, right? That can happen. And also, another thing to mention is that, in this article, they're leaving out quite a bit and how advanced things have gotten. Very advanced in terms of, artificial intelligence, data harvesting. If you look back at certain groups that were involved in getting information from social media on voters, they were said to have gotten 7,000 different data points on citizens to build psychological profiles on them and then target them with ads on social media and other posts and things like that. So it gets pretty advanced, gets pretty complicated, and then you add in a lot of surveillance and so, you tie it all together with big tech, and it gets pretty advanced. It gets easier and easier, actually, to manipulate populations. So, then we have diverting frustrations and hatred to a new target. You can go. I think we're. You can go read that if you want. Yeah, you can go read that. We're just going to read tactics real quick, and then we'll be done with this. Move on to the next part. Tactics. There are many tactics of pursuing a strategy of demoralization, the nature of the target, and the environment at the time determining the best method to employ. Examples include, here's some examples, some tactics of demoralization. Insertions into neutral press, direct transmission through publications or radio or social media, the internet, books and pamphlets, forgeries, whether forged letters from home-inspiring homesickness or forged government documents, tactical delivery systems like airplane or balloon drops, trench mortars, smuggling like the use of printed propaganda for packing materials, camouflaging propaganda to appear as currency so it may be carried about freely, deception, disinformation, agents of influence. Okay, so there's many different tactics used for demoralization. But insertions, I want you to focus on insertions into supposed neutral press of the media. Direct transmission through publications or radio. Today, again, the main method is the internet, podcast, social media, video, these types of things. That's what I want you to think about. And then when it comes to defense, I'll just briefly go over these and then we'll move on. Defense against morale. Some of these are definitely useful just to take a look at. 5 different things to defend against demoralization. Do the constituent parts of the group fear their own leadership more than the enemy? Do the constituent parts of the group feel appreciated by their leadership? Do the constituent parts of the group feel their contributions are important and others depend on their continued efforts towards the cause? Do the constituent parts of the group have habits of loyalty and camaraderie? And do the constituent parts of the group have faith in their leaders and chances of success? Okay, so, and that's in warfare and in context of politics and those types of things. But you can also apply that spiritually, right? Biblically speaking, as Christians, do you fear God more than the devil? That's important. And then things going on in the world and his servants, do you fear them more or God more? Do you feel appreciated, loved by God? Do you feel your contributions are important? The things that you do, will they be recognized and appreciated by God? Do the constituent parts of the group have habits of loyalty and camaraderie? Do you have, do you love the brethren and have charity one towards another? The bond of perfectness. That's cohesion, right? And do they have faith in their leaders? And mentioning that, there's been a demoralization campaign against Christians in many leaders following. And, sometimes it almost seems like some people are put in a position, right? They seem to be good for a while. Many people look up to them. They trust them. They see them as a good leader. And then they later fall because of sin, because of corruption. Something bad happens, right? They're taken down. They're exposed. It's all over the news. people are upset and they're demoralized. Sometimes it almost seems like that whole setup was done on purpose. Put in that position just to have them later fall. The whole time they were planning the fall later on to cause the demoralization. Maybe someone, they profess to be some type of Christian. Certain groups knew about the skeletons in their closet, that they were a fake. They allowed them to be in a position of influence, maybe even on a television show. And then later they get busted for some really disgusting, evil stuff, and they go to prison. And it takes the Lord's name in vain, causes his name to be blasphemed. And they say, oh, look at those disgusting hypocrites and Christians. The Bible's fake, God is fake, it's all junk. Wow, what an effective demoralization campaign. Almost like it was planned that way. Just another thing for you to think about. Okay, so let's be done with that article. Let's move on to the notes. And so as you can see, we could go on and on about this concept of demoralization in the terms of psychological warfare, how it's used. But I just wanted to see, definitely in the world how this hypothetically could be used domestically. And I want you to see that for sure. But I also want you to see that not only is it used modern day times in warfare, in politics, but that it has been used in the Bible for thousands of years, actually. Tactics of demoralization have been used, by the way, not only by wicked people, but God himself has used demoralization against his enemies. Because, I don't know, some people have the illusion that war is inherently evil in and of itself, and that is actually false. So if you would believe that, that's not biblical. Because God says, I, the Lord, am a man of war. And God also commanded many wars to be fought in the Old Testament. And so war could not be evil if God commanded it inherently. War is only evil when it is for an unjust cause. It is not sanctioned by God. It's an unrighteous. And most of the wars today have been unrighteous, have been unnecessary and unjust. Okay? So, having said all that, God, it says the Lord is a man of war, so he has used this tactics against his enemies as well. There's nothing that inherently makes it evil. It's just a tactic of warfare. Okay? So let's take a look at where this is found in the Bible. You can get some really great lessons out of this. See how, and I want you to see how many of the tactics you can spot in the Bible. Not only in the verses, in the passages that I'm going to go over, but whenever you're reading through the Bible, I want you to keep your eyes open now to see whenever this has been used. You start to pick up on it. We will look at different ways demoralization happens and how to fight against it biblically. First, we're going to start with Sennacherib. Sennacherib and his chief propagandist. Okay, so Sennacherib was king of Assyria and during the reign of King Hezekiah. Okay, and so I want you to take a look at this. And this is in the book of Isaiah. It's recounted in Chronicles, but this telling of it in Isaiah 36, and then we'll read from 37 after that. Isaiah chapter 36. You're going to see it clearly. You're going to see clearly that psychological warfare was being used, a demoralization campaign against Israel. So let's take a look. Isaiah 36, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the defense cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem unto King Hezekiah with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field. Then came forth unto him Eliakim, Hilkiah's son, which was over the house, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah Asaph's son, the recorder. And Rabshakeh said unto them, say ye now to Hezekiah. Okay, so Rabshakeh is a representative of Sennacherib. He's on the side of Sennacherib, the heathen king of Syria, who was wicked. This guy is his chief propagandist. I want you to see how he was doing psychological warfare, demoralization campaign against Israel. Watch. And Rabshakeh said unto them, say ye now to Hezekiah, thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, what confidence is this wherein thou trustest? Okay, remember, demoralization, one of the goals is to destroy confidence in their cause. What confidence is this wherein thou trustest? I say, sayest thou, but they are but vain words. Remember, another goal, demoralization, is to make it seem like everything they do is in vain for no reason. I say, sayest thou, but they are vain words. I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? So he's trying to demoralize them by destroying their trust in God, the God of Israel, the God of the Bible. That's a demoralization tactic. Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him. But if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah hath taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, ye shall worship before this altar? Okay, again, what is Rabshakeh doing? Now he's trying to destroy not only their confidence in God, but in the confidence of their king, Hezekiah, in their leader. Okay, so all the different aspects of a demoralization campaign are being used here. Now, therefore, give pledges, I pray thee, to my master, king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon them. Okay, so he's trying to not only destroy their confidence in their God and in their king, saying all their fighting is in vain, they will never win. Then he tries to bribe them, persuade them, right? He says, I will give you 2,000 horses. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? So you can't trust in your ally. And am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, go up against this land and destroy it. Then said Eliakim and Shebna and Joah unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it. And speak not to us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Okay, so now look at what Rabshakeh continues to say. But Rabshakeh said, hath my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language. Okay, I want you to pay attention to what he's going to say here. He started to speak to everyone. He cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language and said, hear ye the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus saith the king, let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you. Okay, so now he's getting more bold with the demoralization. He's saying, your king is lying to you. Don't listen to your king's lies. He destroys the confidence by saying he will not be able to deliver you. He will not be able to protect you from the king of Syria. Verse 15, neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord. Now again, not only destroying confidence in the king, but also God. Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Okay? So, and this is, you have to see behind the flesh and blood, okay? Because the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, okay? So you have to see the spiritual reality behind this, which is the devil and his kingdom, okay? So the devil says to everyone, when he says, neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying the Lord will surely deliver us. Okay, so we have promises in the Word of God, and the devil tries to make you doubt those promises, saying, no, God won't deliver you. He won't take care of you. He won't provide for you. That's the devil trying to demoralize you. But he uses also people to do it, to say demoralizing things to you on behalf of the devil's kingdom. They're doing the devil's work. Verse 16, hearken not to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and eat ye every one of his vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink ye every one of the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Hezekiah persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Hath any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arphad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? And have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who are they among all the gods of these lands that have delivered their land out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? Okay, so now he tries to compare the one true God of the Bible, the God of Israel, to all these other false gods. He says, well, you know, all these false gods, all these other gods, they didn't deliver them. They didn't save them. The king of Assyria conquered all of them. What makes your God any different? What makes you think your God's going to deliver you? You're just going to be just like them. Right? And again, he's trying to demoralize them, make them doubt their God, doubt their king, doubt their cause, lose confidence in everything, and surrender to the enemy. But they held their peace and answered him not a word. For the king's commandment was, answer him not. Then came Eliakim the son, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, to Hezekiah with their clothes rent, and told him the words of Rabshakeh. Okay, so they were distressed. They were upset by what was being said, but they didn't fall into the trap. They didn't say anything to him. The king said, don't say anything to him. Just ignore him. Okay? Now, having said that, I'm not just going to tell you that and then not what the response should be. We're going to read what the response should be, because the Bible shows us what the proper response from the righteous should be to a demoralization campaign against them. We have that example in Isaiah 37, so let's get into that. And it came to pass when King Hezekiah heard it, that he rent his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests covered with sackcloth, unto Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz. And they said unto him, thus saith Hezekiah, this day is a day of trouble, and of rebuke, and of blasphemy. For the children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring forth. It may be the Lord thy God will hear the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria his master had sent to reproach the living God, and will reprove the words which the Lord thy God hath heard. Wherefore lift up thy prayer for the remnant that is left. Okay, so the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah. All right, now what did they do? They rent their clothes, got in sackcloth, all these other things. They're humbling themselves. They are immediately turning to God, and then they're coming to Isaiah, which he was a prophet who gave the word of God to the people back then, right? That's what prophets did. And so they came to God in prayer, and they come to the word of God. And that's exactly what we need to do today. Is the first thing we need to do when demoralization, we see that being done to us, if we feel demoralized in any way, is to immediately go to God in humility, saying, in humility in the sense of saying, for without you, I can do nothing. That's what Jesus said. For without me, you can do nothing. It's saying, I have no power. I need you, God. Right? And God said, for, my strength is made perfect in weakness. Paul the Apostle felt demoralized one time when he had the messenger of Satan buffeting him. He asked God 3 times to take it away, and God didn't. And he felt demoralized. You know what God said? My grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Why? Because when you're weak, then you can see the power of God and have no confidence in the flesh, no confidence in yourself, but instead in God. And he might not take away the affliction, the trial, the thorn in your flesh, but he'll give you grace to endure it as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. He will, in fact, take away the demoralization. He will boost your morale. But you have to turn to God in humility. So the servants of God, of King Hezekiah, came to Isaiah, and Isaiah said unto them, Thus shall ye say unto your master, Thus saith the Lord, Be not afraid of the words that thou hast heard, wherewith the servants of the king of Assyria hath blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. Okay? So first thing God says is what? Be not afraid. Do not be afraid of the words which thou hast heard. Never be afraid of the words of anyone that's trying to demoralize you. Okay? You should not listen to it. Don't feed into it. Don't meditate upon it. And if you're starting to feel that way, you need to get away from those words, and stop listening to them and start listening to the Word of God. And then, interestingly enough, he shall hear a rumor. Part of psychological warfare. So Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria warring against Libnah. For he had heard that he was departed from Lachish, and he heard say concerning Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, He is come forth to make war with thee. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, Thus shall ye speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah, saying, Let not thy God in whom thou trustest deceive thee, saying, Jerusalem shall not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, thou hast heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands by destroying them utterly. And shalt thou be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them, which my fathers have destroyed, as Gozan and Haran and Rezeph and the children of Eden, which were in Telassar? Where is the king of Hamath, and the king of Arphad, and the king of the city of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Iva? Okay, so another important point to consider is that, Rabshakeh is talking about these, he's making these same points, right? Trying to get them to doubt the king and doubt their God and their cause. And he gives them examples and saying, look at all these nations that were defeated by the king of Assyria and by his army. What makes you any different? And he's trying to get you to do what? Walk by sight, not by faith. Trying to get you to look at circumstance. That's what he's trying to do to Israel. The same thing today. The devil, the world will try to get you to look at circumstances, to keep your mind on earthly things, to walk by sight, everything you see, and not by faith. The Bible says walk by faith, not by sight. The faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's what counteracts this demoralization, when they're trying to get you to focus on circumstances and what you can see. You need to counter it with faith. Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the Word of God. Again, it comes back to the Word of God. and praying for that faith to be increased. So anyways, the point I want you to stick with there is that if you want to counteract demoralization, do not get caught up in focusing on circumstances and walking by sight instead of by faith. By always just paying attention to earthly things and everything that's going around you and looking at them through the eyes that everyone else is looking through. Lost people, people of the world who mind earthly things. Their affections are not set on things above, but on the earth. That's not how it should be with you. They're all looking at things in the earth and circumstances and things which they can see, and so therefore they get fear, they get anxiety, they're demoralized. That's not how we should be. Set your affections on things above, not on the earth. And Hezekiah received a letter from the hand of the messengers and read it. And Hezekiah went up into the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. Again, this is the solution. This is the response that we should have. We had you feel demoralized? Spread the matter before the Lord. Go to God in the prayer closet and pray to him. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, saying, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, that dwellest between the cherubims, thou art the God, even thou alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. Thou hast made heaven and earth. Starts off by praising God. Incline thine ear, O Lord, and hear. Open thine eyes, O Lord, and see, and hear all the words of Sennacherib, which has sent to reproach the living God. Okay? So he goes to pray to God. He pours out his heart to God, and he brings up the problem of his enemy who's trying to demoralize him. Brings it up to God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations and their countries, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they have destroyed them. Hezekiah recognizes, Rabshakeh was saying, none of these gods of all these other nations were able to deliver them and stop the king of Assyria. But Hezekiah says, I know that's because those were all false gods. They were no gods. That's why they couldn't deliver them. He recognized that. Verse 20, Now therefore, O Lord our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord, even thou only. Then Isaiah the son of Amoz sent unto Hezekiah, saying, okay, so before we read that, okay, see what he did? King Hezekiah? He brought the matter before God, poured out his heart unto him, showed him the problem, and then asked God to deliver him, to save him from it. It's the same thing we need to do today. Then Isaiah the son of Amoz sent unto Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Whereas thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is the word which the Lord has spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, hath despised thee and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice, and lifted up thine eyes on high, even against the Holy One of Israel? By thy servants hast thou reproached the Lord, and hast said, By the multitude of my chariots am I come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon. And I will cut down the tall cedars thereof, and the choice fir trees thereof. And I will enter into the height of his border, and the forest of Carmel. This sounds very similar to the statements made by Lucifer, when he said, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. This pride. Because it's the same spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. I have digged and drunk water, and with the sole of my feet have I dried up all the rivers of the besieged places. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, and of ancient times that I have formed it? Now have I brought it to pass, that thou shouldest be lay waste to fenced cities into ruinous heaps. Therefore their inhabitants were of small power, they were dismayed and confounded. They were as the grass of the field, and as the green herb, as the grass on the housetops, and as corn blasted before it is grown up. But I know thy abode, and thy going out, and thy coming in, and thy rage against me. The heathens rage. Why do the heathen rage? People imagine a vain thing. God shall have them in derision. And thy rage against me, because thy rage against me, and thy tumult is come up into mine ears, therefore will I put my hook in thy nose, and my bridle in thy lips, and I will turn thee back by the way which thou camest. And this shall be a sign unto thee, ye shall eat this year such as groweth of itself, and the second year that which springeth of the same. And in the third year sow ye, and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat the fruit thereof. And the remnant that is escaped of the house of Judah shall again take root downward, and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth the remnant, and they that escaped out of the Mount Zion, the zeal of the Lord of hosts shall do this. Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shields, or cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into the city, saith the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake, and for my servant David's sake. Okay, so this is what God says. Now look at the ending of this chapter. God demoralizes Sennacherib. Okay, so Sennacherib sent his propaganda minister to demoralize Israel, to say all these blasphemous words, to boast in pride. And now God is going to demoralize Sennacherib. See what happens. After Hezekiah prayed, they prayed. Then the angel of the Lord went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. 185,000 soldiers killed by one angel. 185,000 God killed in one day. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. And Sennacherib saw that, didn't he? Now, how do you think he felt when he saw that? He looked out and he saw 185,000 of his men dead. He'd be demoralized. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed, went and returned, dwelt at Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adremelech and Sharezer, his son, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia, and Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So then, that was the end of Sennacherib. Okay? So, you know, that was a great example. Those two chapters are a great example of demoralization in the Bible. How Sennacherib used his representative to try to do it to Israel. It failed. They cried out to God. And so God in turn defeated them, fought for his people's battle. The battle's the Lord's. And he demoralized Sennacherib before he killed him. Okay? So that's what happens when you mess with God. Now, getting closer to the end of the teaching, but get a little bit more for you from the Bible. Do a quick passage, and then we'll do the ending chapter. God demoralizes the Syrians with sounds of an invading army. This is another interesting way. Now, again, you can find things like this all throughout the Bible. So, you know, you go look on your own. When you're reading the Bible, you're studying, you can look at all different times that, you know, demoralization was used, whether by the heathen or by God or whatever it may be. You pay attention to that. But here, in this passage, in 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 3, what we're going to see is God demoralizes the Syrians with sounds of an invading army. So let's look at this. Verse 3, and there were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate, and they said one to another, why sit we here until we die? If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. If we sit still here, we die also. Now therefore come, and let us fall under the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die. And they rose up in the twilight to go into the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. Why? Why was there no man there? For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said one to another, lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. Now, if you remember earlier, it said the goal of demoralization is to get the enemy to retreat, surrender, or defect. Well, guess what? They retreated. They fled. They ran away. Why? Because God made them hear just the sounds of a supposed invading army. Noise of chariots, noise of horses, noise of a great host of an army. All they need to hear is the noise. Verse 8, and when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent and did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it. And it came again and entered into another tent, and carried thence also, and went and hid it. Okay, so that's what happened there. Very interesting. God does this, this demoralizing to them, makes them think that this army's coming. They retreat, they run away. God used it. And to end the teaching, the last passage we're going to look at is about this. One wicked man demoralizes an army, and then one righteous man boosts the morale of an army and demoralizes another. Now, what do you think we're talking about here? What are we talking about? Well, we are talking about 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're talking about David and Goliath. Okay? Now, we're going to end with this because I want you to look at the story. You're familiar with the story. Most people are. But I want you to look at it in the context of demoralization, and I want you to view it through that lens. Okay? And we'll get some good lessons out of this. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh and Azekah, and Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath, of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, and he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and kill him, then shall ye be our servants, and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. What does that sound like? Demoralized. demoralized. That's what it was. Okay? Saul, the king, was demoralized, and also all of Israel, the entire army, was demoralized. And by the way, it really affects a group, a army, whatever it may be. When the leader is demoralized, it affects everyone else. Okay, so I want you to take that important concept and drill it into your head. If you are a leader, someone is a leader, and they are demoralized, it's going to spread to everyone else. So that could be a pastor. It'll spread to the whole congregation. It could be the boss of a company. It'll spread to the whole company. Anyone that's a leader, whenever they get demoralized and they express it in public, it's going to spread to everyone else. It's contagious. It's a very, very dangerous thing for a leader to be demoralized. Okay? And so that's one point. And they were demoralized. Why? Because of Saul. Now, why did this affect them that way? Why didn't they have faith? Well, Saul wasn't exactly the greatest king. Didn't have faith in God. If he did, he wouldn't have been demoralized like that. Because he wasn't the one that God wanted to be king. And we'll see who will be. But they were looking at what? Circumstance. They were walking by sight, not by faith. They're saying, oh man, look at this guy, this Goliath. He's so big. We can't beat him. And so when they were walking by sight, it demoralized them. Made them lose confidence and not want to fight. Instead of, not looking at how big Goliath was, but think about how big their God is. And having faith that he would give them the victory, they weren't thinking about that. They weren't seeing through the eyes of faith. Now, David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of his parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now, do you think David's dad, Jesse, had any idea that David was going to want to fight the giant? Who knew it was going to happen? Probably no clue. Verse 19. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. Okay, so David heard, he saw Goliath, heard him say the same things, same threatenings, but watch David's response. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. Again, every time they saw Goliath, they were demoralized. They ran away, retreated. And it shouldn't have been that way, but that's what happened. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Now we're starting to see David had a different attitude. David is starting to sound like he was not demoralized, even though he was younger than these men that were here in this army. Right off the bat, David is getting upset that this man, Goliath, is blaspheming God, this heathen. He's defying the armies of the living God, which means he's blaspheming God, going unchallenged. And he's looking around going, Why aren't you guys doing anything? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So it shall be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. So, his brother starts giving him a hard time. You're filled with pride. You just wanted to come see a fight. You should be back at home doing your job. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? Ooh, boy. Now, remember earlier when reading about demoralization, it said that, well, first of all, the importance of morale. Morale, you have to have confidence in a cause, and especially a group that all has very high confidence in a cause that they're fighting for. David said, Is there not a cause? He's saying there is a cause. There is a higher cause that you guys should be fighting for, and you're not. And the reason you're not is because you're demoralized. Guess what? David was not demoralized. And that's why he said, Is there not a cause? Because the cause in his mind and in his heart was not destroyed. He did not have doubt in that cause. He did not lose faith in that cause of fighting for God, fighting God's battles. He didn't lose faith in God. That's why I said, Is there not a cause? He was not demoralized. And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul. And he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Okay? So again, David said, we don't need to be demoralized. None of these guys need to be demoralized. I'm not demoralized. I'll go fight. I'll show you. I'll show everyone here what is the right thing to do. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And so because Saul was demoralized, he was speaking demoralizing words to David. Now, what's interesting is demoralization campaigns can be used as a tactic of psychological warfare by an enemy against their opponent, right? But then when the target is affected by demoralization campaign, they can actually unknowingly spread the demoralization to other people around them. Even though they're not intentionally doing it, because they're demoralized, it will spread to other people, especially leaders, as I said before. And so Saul was discouraging him, demoralizing him. Oh, you can't do that. Was it based in faith in the Word of God and in the God of the Bible? No. It was based on walking by sight. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered him it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. So again, because David was not demoralized, he actually starts to give some examples of God giving him victory in the past. Helped him to kill the lion and the bear that were trying to steal his sheep. He saw God's deliverance then. And so based on the past victories that God gave him, answers to prayer, victory by faith, he said, because of that, my faith is strengthened, and I have confidence that God will deliver me again. He will give me the victory today. And so that's another good lesson, that you can boost your morale by looking to all the blessings and all the times that God delivered you out through trials, out of trials, delivered, answered prayer, all these other types of things through the past, all the things that God brought you through over and over and over again. It's good to remember those things, to talk about them, and to say them to yourself even, to boost the morale of yourself, to boost the morale of others, and say, hey, let me tell you, give you a testimony about what God has done in my life. So many times how God has answered prayer, how he's brought me through these trials. Let me tell you how. And that's morale boosting, which is opposed to demoralizing, like when people complain. They talk about everything's just getting more and more wicked. It's just so wicked. And that is not biblical. I talk about that in the message I did called The Negative Defeatist Attitude versus the Attitude of Victory and Triumph. Some people just, Christians, professing Christians, all they want to say is, oh, everything's so wicked and everything's so evil and it's just getting more and more wicked. And that's all they talk about all the time. And guess what? It's demoralizing. It's not biblical. Yes, it's okay to see there's evil going on, but what are you going to do about it? Sit there and complain and whine like a little baby? And demoralize everyone else around you? Well, that's doing the work of the devil. So I don't think that's biblical at all. Okay? You're being like King Saul, spreading around your miserable demoralization campaign to everyone around you. And so David wasn't having any of that. He said, you know what? God delivered me out of this. He'll deliver me out of this now. He delivered me in the past. He'll deliver me now. And Saul said unto David, go, the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor. He put his helmet of brass on his head, and also armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. David put them off. He's like, I don't need this armor. I don't need your armor. I will go with God. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? He despised him, he disdained him, and right away he's starting with the demoralization. And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. What are you going to do, David? Curse David by his gods, right to his face. He starts with the demoralization again. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Okay? So again, he continues the demoralization, doing more of the same. He did it to all the armies of Israel. He did it to King Saul. They were demoralized. They weren't fighting him, but now he does it to David. But David has a different response. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Much different response, isn't it? David didn't let the words of Goliath demoralize him. He didn't listen. He refused to let those words penetrate his heart, to affect his mind. It just bounced right off of him. His faith was so strong, his confidence in God so strong, that it didn't affect his morale at all. In fact, he was defiant against evil, in the face of evil, stood right up to him and said, this is what's going to happen to you. And the reason I know this is going to happen is because the battle is the Lord's, because God's going to do it. I'm not trusting in swords and spears, or even in the sling, any earthly weapons and material things. I do not walk by sight, I walk by faith. I don't look at circumstances, and I don't care how tall the giant is in front of me. It doesn't matter that I'm a youth, because God is the one that gives the victory. And so David's morale remained intact, stronger than ever, and it was time for battle. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. No fear. When your morale is high, no fear of the battle. And David put his hand in his bag, took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, and that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, cut off his head therewith. He cut off Goliath's head, just like he said he would. And what happened? And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley, to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sharaim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel were turned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. So what happened in the end? He defeats Goliath, kills him, and two things happen at the same time. Number one, the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. As soon as David had the victory over Goliath, instantly all of the Philistines were demoralized and ran away, they retreated. With one victory, the Philistines were demoralized. And at the same time that the Philistines were demoralized, instantly the men of Israel had their morale boosted. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines. They finally were ready to fight. So the Philistines were demoralized. The armies of Israel had their morale boosted in one moment in the victory of David. And what this shows is how contagious a victory can be. How contagious someone who has strong faith in God, and when they get the victory and they step out in faith, they start slaying Goliaths, the giants, knocking them down, how contagious is that faith? It spreads to many, many other people. Takes away the demoralization. So this shows you the importance of not only having your morale boosted, but of even just one person, one Christian making a difference. And that stands up, and they're not, everyone around them is demoralized. Everyone is losing hope, and they're discouraged. But one stands up and says, "Is there not a cause? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? You should defy the armies of the living God. The battle is the Lord's. I'll go fight." And he will run to the battle with no fear. He will slay Goliath. He will hold the head of Goliath for all to see. The enemies of God will flee in terror. And the people of God will rejoice. They will shout. The joy of the Lord is their strength. And instantly, in a moment, their morale is boosted. I want you to see how important this is. Morale is contagious. Faith is contagious. Acts of faith are contagious. By the way, it takes risk. Faith reckons. Leonard Ravenhill said, faith reckons, it risks, and then it rests. But part of that is risks. Sometimes you got to step out in faith and take a risk. And that could be many different things. Biblical things that you are called to do. You could be in a different position in life. You may be a pastor, you may not be. You might be a man, you might be a woman, you might be a parent, might be not. Whatever it may be. Single, married, everyone has a different lot in life. But God could be calling you to step out in faith. And not only is this important for you to obey God and step out in faith, but you never know who else could be affected when they see you step out in faith and take that risk and then get that victory and say, God gave me the victory. God delivered me. Look at how greatly God is blessed because I obeyed God. I stepped out in faith. I didn't fear. I didn't look at circumstances. I looked to God and the Word of God. I didn't walk by sight. I walked by faith. I was looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. I went to God in prayer and I poured out my heart unto Him. I didn't murmur and complain. I didn't wallow in a sea of self-pity. Demoralized. I had faith in the Lord God Almighty. I said, the battle is the Lord's. And I got the victory. And I'm going to end just with a few verses. Morale-boosting verses. I'm just going to read these and we'll end. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Watch ye, stand fast in the faith. Quit you like men, be strong. Ephesians 6:10 and 11. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Thou therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. 2 Timothy 2:1. 2 Timothy 2:3. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. And that should boost your morale and tell you exactly what you need to do. So, don't be demoralized. Don't be ignorant of Satan's devices. Watch out what's being done to you, about you, to other people. Be aware of the war that's going on so that you will not fall victim to it. But instead, engage in the battle and get victory in the battle. You can have victory. This is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Remember that. And that victory belongs to those that are saved by the blood of Jesus Christ. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. That is, when Christ is in you, when you are born again, when you repent of a life of sin and rebellion against God and put your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, that he took your sin and the punishment for your sin, rose again from the dead. When you put your faith in him, call upon him to save you, you will be saved, you will be born again, and you will be given the ability to have that victory. But until then, you are dead in trespasses and sins and very, very susceptible to the demoralization campaign. And that's it. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Check all the links down below. Subscribe to all the other platforms. Thank you for all the support and prayers. I'll see you on the next one. God bless you. Have a good day.